Hello, everyone. This is Weekly Impact by Lay of the Land. It is Chris, it's the 26th of August, 2024. I'm Jim Haviland.
And I'm Kris Snyder. Jim, it's hard to believe summer is almost over. I take my
Almost
daughter to
over, man.
college tomorrow. My other
Yeah,
daughter's already back to high school. It is the end of it, heading
we
into
did
that fall time.
we did our Shaker Heights block party, which is the hallmark of our ending the summer. We did the rocket car and the bouncy house, and
Yep.
I did not get in the bouncy house, Chris.
I'd like to see it.
Did not do it. My bouncy house days are over. So we got a couple things to cover here today. We're going to talk about Rust Belt recruiting, Best of Tech, the VC Fest, and if we get some chance, we'll talk about the flywheel. But let's start with number 180. This is our good friend Taylor Evans and Rust Belt recruiting. And Chris, this was another great show. Have you spent much time with Mr. Evans?
No, just reputationally, we really haven't had a chance to spend time, but love the story, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think I'm a grinder at heart, right? Like, and that's so when folks he has to come through, and we also share in common. Like, I started with a lawn care landscape company in high school. He had a
Great
much
name
better
he had.
name.
Yeah.
Much better. Mine was my buddy Kevin. So we were K&K Lawn Care, and he was much more fortunate with Lord and Taylor Lawn Care. It sounds a little bit better.
Maybe he put a little bit more time into the naming thing, Chris, because important things have names. You have to learn that still. It's all right.
I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah.
But he kept playing up the name thing, right? So he went on to found his company, and it was Evans Group. He made the comment it sounded more like an insurance company than a recruiting
Could
company.
be anything. Yeah.
Yep. And then found his way to Rust Belt, which is a great name, right? I think you feel it, right, when you say it, which is one of the most important things, and have a brand and a name.
We talk about it all the time, and it also applies focus. I mean, that he's actually building a company that's about manufacturing in this area. I mean, I think that's, what a great blessing to have a name that confers exactly what you're doing all the time. And It's recruiting, not just filling in gaps. It's like real recruiting, because he went through all those journeys, and he's been through it all, right, Chris? He's been through the full boat experience of being an entrepreneur, good times and bad times.
Yeah, we like to talk about step functions of growth, right? Especially as you come through the 5 stages of development. So you start a business, you're in survival, you get a little bit better, get some more customers, you're in sustain, I get to scale, I just lost a Jim, success and then stewardship.
Success and stewardship, right?
Yeah. Yep. And so, but those things they're not just a linear step function. Sometimes you take a couple steps back to take a couple steps forward. And
it's like we've always taught people. I love those in general that stuff we learned from Gartner on having a maturity matrix and having there's some areas you're going to be maybe a little bit more advanced, some areas you're not going to be advanced, but it's a framework. It's supposed to be useful, not accurate, and you just know that there's next thing coming. But he certainly has followed the guidance that I give all my clients: is you've got to be that leader preparing for the next stage, and that's your job. Your job is to keep moving towards that next stage, and he's been a great job of that.
Yeah, well, intentionality, right? Like we love that thought, and he's implemented EOS with our good friend Dan Rose, and
Dan's great shout out to Dan. Yep.
Yeah, big shout out Dan, because he brought him as as a board member, mentor in that moment of this happens when we're trying to diversify the business. Maybe we move into an adjacent area. His story was moving in from recruiting to staffing. Pretty common, we see it because it's kind of like you got clients, they ask you about it. It's not exactly what you do. Right. You dabble in it. You don't know how to price it. Maybe the processes aren't the same.
And the people from a distance, Chris, probably don't really get the difference, because it sounds like it's almost exactly the same thing, but it's a completely different workflow, completely different way of thinking about the market.
You got to carry payroll, like he talked about. Like staffing, they work for you. Those are your employees. You're lending them out. You're leasing them out. You're renting them out to others, right? And they're your still employee of record, and brings with a lot of other complications. It could be a really great business, but it is a different set of focus, right, as you go and to serve it. So, Dan's question.
Think about the processes you got to get good at. Your focus in the world is so different. So, coming up, that he asked the right question. Dan did.
Yeah. How do you make money? Or where do you make money? Something like that, right? Which is great, because it is the right question when you're struggling on the investment. Now, I've done something similar, and I've watched clients go figure it out. It was more of a pricing issue and a product issue than it was, the issue at hand that might have been they're in the wrong business. So it's not always the same answer for everyone, but it is the right question and the right resolve to go back through and gut check yourself if that's the right
Yeah.
business.
And Chris, this has come up a couple times in clients recently where people tried to talk about what the answer to that question was, and this is an Excel spreadsheet question. You're gonna answer it with numbers. You're gonna look at and ask a couple different ways, calculate it, break it down different ways, and kind of figure this. So, you know, don't pretend you can just know this stuff. This is like something you think about, and it's like, well, how we allocate costs, how we allocate, where the revenue comes from, how hard is that revenue to get, and those things intend to have numbers beside them. So don't be afraid to, you know, to get that's where the truth really lies. Quite often, in the end, we have to make money.
Yeah, there's. I just do want. I do want to leave the door open for exploration because people like to
Sure.
talk about the vision they have. However they got their vision, coming off the mountain, filling out a book, whatever it is. But I still think often in the early days, in that survival, going into sustain, and maybe even trying to move forward, you got to do some exploration. These are testable theories; they're big bets, and so I still like the courage to do it because you sometimes don't know if it's the right thing to do until you step into the ring and you take a couple swings.
Well, but I think it's still the place where I see people blow it in those bets is when they don't see where the opportunity is. So that's why, like, I teach the reverse income statement and building a model. Like, where's the opportunity? What are the things I need to make happen quite specifically if I'm going to make this work? What is my sequence of stuff?
Yep.
Because you're not going to have infinite resources at this. You're going to have, what's the test really mean? What are those testable theories we're going to put in place, and how are we going to keep track of that stuff? And I think that's really the model everyone can learn from is taking some discipline to it. Disciplined exploration is going to keep you from falling deep into a well somewhere and not have anyone to be able to pull you out. He also talked about the gaps in our current workforce and how he's into robotics, and I think that those are great jobs to go fill at this point, like building the robots, maintaining the robots. It's the future. It isn't like an evil thing. It's part of becoming great, and that whole that exoscale that we can try to get to with manufacturing. We have to get to robotics.
Yeah, and I would say let's call it skilled labor because it is skilled labor, right? And not
Right.
trying to take away from any other type of labor. But I think often in manufacturing, people lose sight of that this is
Yes.
more than just I'm going to go get trained on the job. That these are folks that are professionally invested and trades invested. And I coached a couple companies during the pandemic, the manufacturing space, and one which was GNS Metals, which they do metal stamping, and the great company, but they always had like 60, 70 jobs open. They couldn't fill them, right? And it's hard work. It's not.
It is hard work. Yeah.
It's hard work, and
it's a real job. You get to go home at the end of the day. You're not carrying it with you.
right.
You were talking before. Getting up at 3:30 in the morning, worrying about stuff or thinking about stuff because you can't turn it off. That's not so much the case. You're going to sleep pretty good. You're going to get up on time and get to work.
Yep.
And go do it. I did it. I did it with construction. I worked at a little manufacturing. I worked in restaurants. The same thing. It's like, hey, we locked the door. Everything's clean. We get to go home. We're done.
Get to go home now.
Although tomorrow at this exact time, I gotta be back here to make it happen again. So, so the last thing I think it's interesting. Our good friend Jeffrey is going through a realization that business operating systems matter a lot. His own discovery that, oh my God, everyone that's really good is actually running a consistent operating system. And I think that's an interesting part of this story for this week.
Well, and some of it I'll give you. You see a red car, you buy a red car,
Yes.
and you start to see more red cars. So I'll give some of that
yes.
there. But I do think if we were, and Jeffrey did some of this work, I think it was episode like 50 or maybe 100, where he was looking for the patterns between success and not, right? And he was coming up with things like mentorship, right? And in an operating system, like these are good patterns that we're seeing at 180 episodes in. You can see enough patterns, right? And I think that's been it's been fun as part of this work. And at some point, I think we'll have to go back and revisit some of the episodes and use something like AI to help us.
There's
right?
some data. We could do some data analysis on this, I'm sure. But
yeah.
I think it's once again, the thing I always hear is the intentionality. I on purpose made these choices. I tested these things. I found these people. I created a community Yeah, I did the community flywheel of like the right mentors. I mean, he talked about that again, having Dan Rose on both as both an implementer, but also as a board member, and
Yep.
realizing and he appreciates like that those are the people that matter the most. Is do you have the right people around you to make those kinds of things? And the last two things, Chris, he's an EO member, so that's a consistent part of a lot of the stories that we know that've been on the show, and but and something else I hear, and maybe this is my frequency illusion, but I hear a lot more people talking about sobriety being a part of their journey of going out and accomplishing what they want to accomplish. And he was quite open with that, which I appreciate.
Well, I think there is probably some level of attention deficit disorder that links to entrepreneurs and founders,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Haven't been tested, but I'm sure I'm not too far off from the standpoint. Can't sit still, like so. I think that we know that not to characterize, but like often we have those kind of more addictive personalities, and those things happen, right. And the battles are hard. But I think finding your focus and finding where you put your energy and love and time is what most of these stories end up in, right? Where does it really take off?
All right. Well, great episode. So let's move on. We got a couple things coming up in the land here, Chris. We've got a VC Fest coming up on the 17th and 18th. That is Jumpstart's big show, and you're speaking at that with a great panel talking about going from seed to being awesome. The name of it is.
Well, I didn't really understand the size, but they said there's like 550 guests that are going to be there. There's like over 200 founders in that number, which that's awesome to see. Yep. The founders coming out, and then all stages, right, back to your survival all the way through stewardship. So, and I think part of that, our story is we've got folks on the panel that have been there, done that a good amount. So hopefully there's no Q&A, which I thought was a little interesting, but we're taking questions hopefully ahead of time. We prepped today as a panel so we could actually get to know each other a little bit more, talk about some of the stories we're going to bring up. And, it was...
Of course, you know John Updike pretty well.
Yeah.
He's been part of our journey.
From our Vox Mobile days, right, as CMO. And Bill Premer was there from Highland. And what's funny about that is John actually worked with Bill because he worked at Highland Software in his journey.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
okay,
so
good.
We got to have some of those crossover conversations and talk about it. And it was, one of the things that came up was, I brought it up, is that people don't think enough about bootstrapping as a point of pride. They often think about, hey, I'm successful if I get to a raise. My comment was, look, I think there's so much more pride as a founder. Further you can get without a Series A or Series B, the better off you are. I used our example at 90, right? Like we got to a Series A, bootstrapping it up, we pulled in customers, we pulled in employees, right? Like we pulled in people to figure out how to take equity over cash to bootstrap to that place. And we did our Series A. It was $100 million pre-valuation.
$100 million at pre, and then and think about what that does for all the people you got to choose as part of your stakeholder group in that group, right? So that you're all those people get to benefit from being part of that, and that's a great story to be able to tell. And those are the people that really want you to win anyway. So you want that energy in the beginning. What you don't want is having a VC that doesn't care about you all that much. Nothing against VCs; they're an important part of the ecosystem, but they're not paid to take care of you. They're not paid to be your best friend. They need you to make money for them.
Yep, they're just optimizing outcomes in those moments. So, yep, excited about that panel.
That sounds good. And then Best of Tech, we'll call it this one. We got that on the 24th of September. So we're end of the summer, Chris. We're going back into networking in a heavy way. And the great thing about Best of Tech, we got a bunch of people to call out. Tech CEO of the Year, Joshua Edmonds is up for that one. Chief Executive Officer of Digital C, he's been on the show. His show just recently played. That's a great one.
That's great.
Health Tech of the Year for MetaView VXR, also been on the show. Excited about that one. A couple of your clients, Fit Technologies and TRG, have been the best IT services companies that are on the list there. So you got a good chance of winning it, by proxy in that one. And then our own Jeffrey Stern is up for the Community Impact Award for Lay of the Land. So, and I think we'll have to call it there. We don't have time to go into your flywheel, but we have at some point we want to hear about the community flywheel as you envision it and how that all fits in.
Well, I think you just talked about it. all the great work, right? People do coming together. So
yeah, awesome. Man, that's exactly right. So, well, good. So Go out, watch number 180, Kris. And anything else we got to cover this week?
No, man, I think that's a wrap.
All right, we'll get to it, my friends. Sign up for those things. All of the links will be in the show notes, and we'll see you next week. Bye, Kris.
All right, Jim.